Hey, it's Fan Fantasy, and I cover tactical and immersive games. And I had the chance to play Gray Zone by Madfinger Games during their 7-day testing period with some of the other creators and friends. It's been a while since I covered a first-person shooter, just because, things have been quite dry in that space. Nor did I find any of them fun, at least in my opinion. But after playing Gray Zone Warfare, I have to say I enjoyed my time in this playtest. As I said before, I haven't been covering a lot of FPS on my channel, and if you're like me who's been struggling to find joy in some of these tactical shooter genre, well, I hope that this video can provide a different perspective or opinions on it. And if you're curious about Gray Zone Warfare, well, I hope to help you on that too. And like many of you, when Gray Zone was announced and when many content creators were covering it, I was kind of skeptical of how they're going to integrate an open world with an extraction shooter type FPS game. And to be honest, a lot of extraction shooters have been so hot lately. I have played Escape from Tarkov, but it wasn't really my cup of tea. Nor did I like the idea that you had nothing, no help, no map at all to start off with. And the learning curve was a little bit too high with a lot of sweaty players and even hackers. I'm more of a PvE than a PvP player anyways, but if you're like me who likes co-op or single player experience, Gray Zone is something to look forward to, and playtesting helped me to really understand what this game is all about. Gray Zone is essentially a PvPvE, or it can be a full PvE experience. It is a first-person tactical shooter with elements of extraction shooter and loot and survival mechanics. And as I said before, it's an open world game, and in my experience, it wasn't just an extraction shooter because in some cases you're not bounded by time, and there's a lot of freedom to do whatever you want or what you want to choose to focus on in your playthrough. Basically, you could choose to do your task or choose to explore a location, call in a chopper, the closest LZ that you have unlocked, do what you need to do, and then call in an extraction or march back to your base at any time. There's also a survival mechanic where if you die, then you lose everything except for the things in your lockbox. But you can get your things back if you're able to find your body. You will need to maintain your thirst and hunger, and there's also a medical system which I'll talk about more later in this video. You can also customize your weapons, which if you're a Tarkov player, you'll find is very similar. And depending on your equipment, such as the vest or backpack, there are sizes, things that you can carry on it. In terms of how this game feels and some inspirations, in my opinion, it definitely feels a little bit of Escape from Tarkov with open world like DayZ, with a taste of Ghost Recon Wildlands and Breakpoint. And the environment definitely feels like a Far Cry 2 and even 3. Also feels like in many ways like Stalker Anomaly without the anomalies, but with co-op with your friends. You might be wondering, well, what's the story of Gray Zone? So something terrible happened in the middle of a fictional island called the Democratic Republic of Lemang, and it's a 42-kilometer square island, and the civilians were evacuated by the United Nations. Fortunately, UN had pulled out, and hostile gangs, military, and even hostile factions have taken control of the island. As a player, you get to choose one of the 3 PMC factions that are there to explore, do good deeds, and plunder the island for resources. Each of the 3 factions has its own goal and how they operate. In a quick summary, we have the LRI, which stands for the Lemang Recovery Initiative, founded by a tech millionaire who had the goodwill of finding survivors after Ground Zero and UN abandonment of the island. This group is composed of highly professional security detail that accompanies search and rescue teams and to protect them from harm. Basically, they're more of the good guys who are trying to help the recovery of the island. Second PMC faction is the Mithras Security Systems. Their past history isn't really well known, but they do pay well for the best. They are also inspired by the Roman legions, where the spoils of war are shared among each other. The last one is the Crimson Shield International, and they become well known in the early stages of the Syrian civil war, and they have a 95% successful rate in their operations. But their methods and their way of operating are questionable at best, and they're well known for their cold-blooded approach, and they're known for their lust for adventure and action. You can basically interpret this as a bit more shady than the other 2. Once you choose your faction, you won't be able to switch until there's a wipe or reset. This means that if you're with the LRI, you won't be able to play with friends in Mithras. So make sure you choose with your friends. And so what are my thoughts? As someone who didn't really enjoy Escape from Tarkov, I actually enjoy this a whole lot more. You're given a map of where things are at, and the kits that you start off are decent enough. The fact that you can easily play with friends or people in the same faction is really nice. In terms of my general impressions, well, the weapon models, character details, and even how the wind interacts with the clothing are highly detailed and of good quality. The gunplay feels a bit more of a hardcore tactical shooter side of things than like a Call of Duty for sure. The sounds are quite decent, but they definitely do need some adjustments and rework of how you hear the sounds at a distance. But for sure the sound is quite debatable at best. At the time of the playtest, optimization was a big issue. I got mostly 40 to 50 FPS and maybe even 60 at times with DLSS turned on. However, we do know that optimization will be fixed. Even though my settings were medium, the game does look beautiful for sure. Speaking of the game itself, the game is made in the latest Unreal Engine 5, and my friend Jericho has a lot to say on how well they implement lumen lighting and how the light interacts with your equipment and all the things around.
I want to go stand in it because I want to see the lumen cast the red light all over my gun. I bet it will. Hey, I get into the middle of it. There's a little red glow on the bottom of my scope now.
Oh, very cool. Very
Love
neat.
it. The sunlight is bouncing off the deck and hitting us.
The graphics and the beauty of this game is definitely a bonus to the gameplay. The world is 42 kilometers square, which is very large and has lots of places of interest to explore. You mainly travel by walking or by helicopter. The more that you explore, the more LZs that you can unlock for your next trip. To simply go to that LZ, you just need to click on it and request for a chopper to pick you up at the closest location. In this map, you might be able to visit Ground Zero if you have the right equipment, but so far I haven't seen any attempts in the playtest. However, my issue or concerns so far at this moment is that there's not a lot of dynamic things that are happening between the towns or places of interest. Even if you do play the PvPvE, the chances of encountering a player from a different faction is less with this huge map, unless you visit a high traffic area like the bunkers or a certain military base. I just hope that they can adjust this by perhaps even adding enemy patrols or something happening between the points of interest, maybe even wildlife. Sure, the environment looks pretty, but it would be nice to have something happening in this beautiful world. I'm just hoping that the loot will change because there isn't really much of a reward to go out and plunder, but there are places like the military bases and even bunkers that are obvious to get better gear. But in short, I just hope they make the places even more interesting in between if they can. In terms of progression and quests, there are things to do such as tasks that you can do through your vendors. Doing them will unlock more things in the store. The tasks are relatively simple at first. They start off with the closest town near your base, and then the task will expand to other areas of the map. What's very different about these tasks is that they're not pinned on the map like your typical Ubisoft game. Even though they don't exactly pin where these locations are at, you'll have to read the missions carefully on where you need to go. The fact that we were the first ones to playtest this means that there's no wiki or any Google to help us. But if you do decide to get this game, I encourage you to do it on your own and even explore, because the fact that it's not marked on your map really encourages you to explore the locations carefully. Definitely took some time to find out where these locations were at, but it definitely felt rewarding at the end. So these tasks were finding something or someone or delivering things or placing a device on a certain location. And like I said, it does encourage a bit more exploring and searching, which I find that it could help you to really appreciate the environment. My only concern is that when a wipe happens or when a game resets, my question is, will these task locations be changed? Will it be dynamic? Because I can definitely see how it can be boring and tiring to do all these same tasks all over again after every wipe. That may happen every so often. Earlier I mentioned about the 3 PMC factions that you can join in the beginning. The PMC factions helps you to work together as a team and even squad up to complete objectives together or explore around and raid. Personally, I think the faction system really does promote teamwork and unity in the game. You can even communicate with players from different factions if you're within proxy. Whether you guys want to engage in PvP, well, that's up to you guys. I feel like the teamwork is encouraged and it's very rewarding at times. PvE mode will also be available at launch, and so for those who want to avoid the sweatiness of other players, this is also a great option to go with. Currently at this stage, I would like to see more faction-based events and even quests that are related to the PMC's agenda and how they operate. For example, like seeing the LRI rescuing civilians or doing good tasks. In terms of gunplay and firefighting, it definitely feels a lot more immersive and even stressful at times. However, at the time of the playtest, the AI was a little bit tanky and even glitchy at times. There were moments where I would get one-shotted, which ruined a lot of the experience. But we do know that the devs are going to fix it, and they have found an issue where there's something wrong with the cavities, which means that this game is actually simulating bullet impacts on the body, which is very impressive. In short, there won't be any hit points on your body, and if you like infantry gameplay, I definitely think that Grayzone does a really good job on simulating this. I did find myself looking for cover just because you do know that the threat is there. Next, the medical system. The medical system was a bit intuitive and quite impressive, such as using a bandage if there are wounds, using a splint for broken bones, and a surgical kit for deep wounds or organ damage. However, it was also a little bit hard at times to know what was wrong with you. Perhaps even having more info on what's wrong or what's hurt would help. For example, I didn't know I had broken bones until my friend examined me, which is something that you could do with other players. What was also impressive is that if you had broken bones, you couldn't climb up things, or if you're just hurt, it would be really hard to control the recoil unless you took some painkillers. We did have an issue of trying to revive our teammates even though we had the right kit. It was grayed out for some reason and we couldn't heal them after examining them. I think a tutorial or some kind of training in the beginning would be helpful in giving the new players the knowledge of how to heal and revive their teammates. But if you're familiar with Escape from Tarkov or Stalker Anomaly or even Ace Medical System, then you should be familiar with this system in Grayzone. Overall, I think the medical system brings a good balance of not having this game like a death simulator, but it does give you the chance of survival so that you can live to fight another day. As I said before, it seems like they're trying to simulate bullet impacts on the body, which is very impressive. But if you're equipped with a decent vest with good plating, then you will be protected. My only issue is that I find the durability a little bit way too high. I would expect the helmet or the vest to degrade really quickly after a few shots with a 7.62. And for the most time, I've been wearing the same plates and vests after they were shot. There were some moments that the AI did one-shot you, but that was mostly because I was hit on the head or shoulder. But we do know that that is being worked upon. Overall, I was very impressed with the gameplay, and as someone who doesn't really enjoy extraction shooters like Tarkov, I actually did find this a lot more friendlier, and there are a lot more you can do in this game. I can see how it opens up different playstyles. Even though Grayzone may have some identity issues, I would say that Grayzone is really trying to bring all the great aspects of some of the games that I mentioned earlier and putting them together into this one game. The devs did say that not even 70% of what they wanted was in this playtest, which means that we can expect a lot more to come. And yes, I know it's very cliche to say that this game has potential, but during this playtest, it does show that Grayzone has a really good foundation, and I just hope that they will build upon this and build it well from the bottom up. To address some concerns and potential issues, ever since the whole debacle with the day before, Grayzone developers have been very open on Twitter to quickly address some issues rather than leaving us to speculate. The fact that they brought in content creators to see if this game was real and legit shows that they really want to market this game well. We gotta give them credit for their transparency. During the playtest, there was an issue with LZ camping and even base camping too, and thankfully it was us who tested it. Otherwise, at launch, this would be a very bad idea. They stated that they'll allow players to fire while on the helicopter, and if the LZ is hot, the helicopter may choose to drop you somewhere else or nearby. Concerning about the map, there will be a feature where PMC factions can capture camps to unlock stashes, spawns, and even a chance for PvP, but you will need to maintain control of it. But I'm not sure how this will work in the PvE game mode. However, one of my concerns is that what about the other percentage of the map that is not used? Will there be dynamic factions fighting, even wildlife, or even patrols? Perhaps one idea could be having convoys scattered across the map where if you successfully ambushed it, then you could get better loot. Perhaps even having a bounty system where if you kill too many PMCs, you get a bounty on your head and it'll be somewhat tracked. And my other thing is that will there be daily quests to keep this game running and even interesting for all players? Because I feel like if you don't have something going on, then players will start to feel dry and lose interest really quickly. Even though this was a pre-early access playtest, I would like to see this game have more time to develop because the AI definitely needs some work, and for many games, AI can make or break a game. Also, optimization will need to improve, but I do believe that they could pull this off. And with Grayzone's popularity now, I hope that their servers are more prepared to handle a number of players, because getting disconnected while you're not in base and losing your stuff will be very frustrating for many. So let's hope that they can know the amount of players that will play on day one. At the time that I'm recording this, the early access release date will be announced on Monday, April 29th. Whether it's going to be early or later than we expected, I just hope that they have enough time to cook and to do it right. So you're probably wondering now if you should play this or should you buy it. Overall, I did enjoy what I saw and experienced in Grayzone, and it's a great foundation. However, games like Grayzone may not be for everyone. While it's an open world, there are aspects of an quote-unquote extraction shooter, but don't expect this to be a pure extraction shooter, and if you're expecting a full Milsim sandbox game, then this game isn't really for you. But if you enjoy games like Stalker Anomaly, or even a bit of Ghost Recon and Far Cry that is more grounded in reality, even Ground Branch or Ready or Not, with some RPG and Tarkov mechanics, then you will for sure enjoy Grayzone. I feel like Grayzone was a lot more friendlier than Tarkov. I think this game will shine if you can play with your friends or simply even teaming up with people in your faction and making new friends along the way. If you're like me who really enjoys the PvE experience, I think Grayzone is that game to play with your friends or even doing that occasional solo adventure. And when we occasionally got into the firefight, it definitely felt very immersive and even stressful at times. So with the different tiers of the game, you might be wondering which one should you buy. There's a standard edition for $35, the tactical edition for $57, and the elite for $79, and the $9.99 for the supporter edition. It's been quite a mixed reaction over the pricing, but it is somewhat similar to the Tarkov pricing packages in the past. You're mostly buying up locker and lockbox sizes and the starter loadouts that come with more ammo, kits, and some gear. Starting at $35 for the game isn't too bad, considering games like Helldiver 2 is $40 USD. The good news is that you can eventually upgrade your game to get more locker and lockbox sizes. I also find that most of the loot and stuff were pretty basic and stuff that you could have gotten from the game's vendor anyways, including food and ammo and some basic weapons to start off with. But this could change once early access and full release is out. The lead developer has been quite open about the pricing and its reasons, and I do believe that if a game is really good, then it's up to you as a consumer to choose if you really want to support it further. And trust me, I do believe my time in Grayzone has been one of the best so far in terms of tactical shooters. To give credit, these devs have been very open and communicative in their game's development. As I said before, it doesn't really hurt to start with the standard edition, which already comes with some equipment, and if you enjoy the game, then you can support it further. So in short summary, Grayzone has been a good foundation so far, and if you really want a gritty, tactical, open world survival game, then I think you will really enjoy this. Lately, with all the tactical shooters, there's not much that has kept me going, and honestly, during the playtest, I kept thinking of Grayzone and my time and my adventure in it, even when I'm not playing, which says a lot for a pre-early access game. Regardless of when this game will release, I just hope that there's enough time to polish, because there are certain things that could make or break a game. Let me know your thoughts on Grayzone, and are you looking forward to it? Is this the game that you'll jump into it once it's released, or are you gonna wait? Perhaps do you have any concerns? These are just my thoughts and my opinions so far, and I hope that you find this helpful, but I also want to hear from you in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe, and join my Discord if you ever want to connect, and I'll see you in my next video.